SAfm.
It is now 7 minutes after 5 o'clock. Next, we're in conversation with Dr. Cho Ayaba, who is the president of the Ambazonia Governing Council, and this is part of the interview that we're having today and asking the question, will Ambazonia become Africa's newest country? Today we speak to Dr. Cho Ayaba, about the current state of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, which is not yet officially recognized. Ayaba is the president of the Ambazonia Governing Council, which is the leading liberation movement behind the Ambazonia War of Independence. Since 2017, Cameroon's mainly English-speaking northwest and and southwest regions have been rocked by violence after separatists declared the independence of Ambazonia. The conflict started due to atrocities in Cameroon mandating the use of French in English language schools and courts in 2016. Several attempts have been made to end the separatist conflict in the country's Anglophone provinces. However, those attempts have failed as nothing much has changed. Dr. Ayaba, good afternoon and thank you so much for making time for us.
Thank you very much and thanks for having me.
How are you feeling? How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Despite the difficulties that Ambazonians are facing.
And what are those difficulties?
Systematic violence as a matter of state policy, burning down of villages, abduction, killings and dumping of Ambazonian males in rivers, and a general state of decay caused by the almost 60 years of occupation of our country.
The occupation of when you say our country, are you speaking about Cameroon in general, or are you just speaking about Ambazonia?
Ambazonia was the first democracy in the continent of Africa, the first country that organized free and fair elections and peaceful transition of power from the ruling government to the opposition. And we had our independence held in abeyance to forming a federation with Cameroon that was hijacked by Cameroon that gained its independence in 1960 and effectively occupied our country since then. Okay.
So what does the future then hold for Ambazonia? We'll go into some of the current affairs issues related to now, but what does the future hold for Ambazonia, and what do you see the independence of Ambazonia looking like?
Now, what we are experiencing in Africa is political independence that is micromanaged from SY colonial capitals. So most of the so-called independent African states are external colonies of the countries that colonized them. They have some level of political independence. They have no level of economic independence. They don't design their policies. They don't design whether they're financial, monetary, or economic policies. So what we are looking at when we talk about Ambazonian independence is the first truly independent state in Africa, where both political, economic, and social decisions are truly in the hands of the people. And they can design their economy in reflection of their own economic reality. And so what we really stand for is a set of values that bestow to the African people, bestow to the Black people, bestow to the Ambazonians, true freedom in the land of their birth, giving them the opportunities to exploit their own resources, to develop their capabilities, an educational system that reflects our own economic and political reality. Not all of these kind of pseudo-independence handed down by white colonialism that has been hijacked, and the people of Africa remain slaves in the hands of puppet called presidents.
So if, for instance, the decision that was taken back in 2016, and this is mandating that in schools where there is English being spoken, that if it should be French speaking, Do you think that there would have been this separatist movement that we are currently seeing? Because one of the things that I've been struggling with is this really the core of the fight? Is the fight really the English-speaking region fighting against the French-speaking region because of the marginalization of the English-speaking provinces or parts of the region?
It has been presented that way in a very, very shallow way, as to make it look like it's a clash of culture, or, a clash of an erstwhile English colony fighting against an erstwhile French colony.
Over language.
Over language. It's a reductionist approach that defies the logic of a people seeking to establish over themselves political institutions that are a reality of their own existence. This is a classic case of annexation, where we as a people existed within a defined space with an international border demarcated in 1919, an international border which Cameroon inherited and became independent on 1st January 1960 without Ambazonia. And on the 1st of October 1961, as the British were departing, Cameroon marshaled its forces and took over our country, and has since then put in place economic, political policies that totally dismantled our own institutions and desperately tried for 60 years to supplant those institutions with institutions that reflected its own reality. That's what is being termed today as discrimination. No, discrimination is as a result of occupation. So this is an anti-colonial black-on-black colonialism, which is somehow tolerated because the face of the colonial power is not white. We had our country. We have it now. Cameroon is a brutal occupier that has murdered more than 30,000 people. It has 5,000 Ambazonians in its jail. It has burned down more than 1,000 of our villages. It has enacted senseless policies within our land that has threatened the existence of Ambazonians as a people. This is a struggle for our survival. And I think, like you struggled during your times, we think this is a collective war. It's a collective struggle which every people across the globe should take heed of.
Is it possible, though, to fast track the independence of Ambazonia when you have, for instance, your group, and then on the other end you also have the indigenous people of Biafra? Why is this there? Why are these separate groups existing when there is one goal?
Because they have different colonial regimes. Biafra exists as a colonized people within the framework of the state of Nigeria, and while we exist as an annexed people within the framework of the Republic of Cameroon. And so across the continent, there are different peoples who are fighting for their right for self-preservation and self-actualization. And somehow what we have experienced across the continent is that these regimes that were handed some form of pseudo-independence by colonial states have bonded together against the people of the continent. All the so-called presidents in Africa do not want to criticize terrorism against innocent civilians. They don't want to speak about systematic violence against African people. It is left to the African people facing this dire situation of brutality, corruption, as I was overhearing you talking in one of your programs, systemic violence. It is now in the hands of these people across different borders to rally together to save the people of Africa in establishing truly independent states that can truly exist for the interests of our peoples.
Is that even possible when you have, for instance, people like President Paul Biya, who has been in power since 1982?
It is perceived as impossible because we have never imagined a model different from the existing model. So, for example, you in South Africa, you think by a repeating cycle of elections that is organized, overseen by a few powerful people, you are somehow going to get rid of corruption. You are somehow going to get rid of the elites. You are somehow going to enjoy freedom. You're wasting your time. We have imagined a model where the existing system is overthrown and replaced by a people-directed system that can organize society to reflect what we want. You don't want to sit there.
What does that system look like? Because this one, we also told that, listen, this is a system where you have the people who decide, who go to the polls every 5 years, and whoever is elected into power then is expected to act on the will of the people. And of course, that doesn't happen sometimes.
That is the misery you are taught to believe in, and you will live and die without really enjoying true freedom. You see, your curriculum of education is designed for you to study the histories of those who took over your land, never truly knowing your own history. The curriculum of education that is being fed down through generation in the continent makes you to study fishing in Norway while you don't really understand fishing in your own backyard. Where a simple mechanic there in Cape Town or in Johannesburg is seen as someone who has not been successful in education, while the mechanic living in London, he's a multimillionaire because you can simply just repair your car. We want to redesign the system to give value to the things that Africans do. If you are a farmer, you take pride in that. You don't see yourself as an unsuccessful person who didn't go to school to become a farmer. We want a political system that cannot simply be overthrown by Western liberal democracies. We want a democratic model that suits our own reality. We want a human rights model that takes into cognizance our own cultural reality. There is a lot wrong in the continent. And if you don't propose a model, we will be singing the anthem of Pan-Africanism designed in 1960, simply to bunch together these presidents handed over to us for their own survival.
Sure, but what is that system? What does it look like? How does it involve the people in decision making?
It's a bottom-up approach where you can organize communities and institutions to reflect the reality of that community. Where election is not simply, a process of legitimizing an existing system that is fraught with violence and corruption. It is a model that cannot be overthrown. There are different models in the world. I don't want to go into details, but there are different models in the world put in place specifically so that they cannot be overthrown by, powerful lobbyists. They cannot be corrupted simply by, instruments of the liberal capitalist model. And I think we are working on a model that we will market to the African people, beginning with Ambazonia and Biafra and other peoples who are interested in freedom.
Okay, 011-714-2006, taking some of your calls. Also, you can drop me a voice note on 0614-104-107 and an SMS on 41391. We're in conversation with Dr. Cho Ayaba, who is the president of the council, who's the president of the Ambazonia Governing Council, and asking the question that could Ambazonia become Africa's newest country? What do you think of that? Is that possible at all? Dr. Ayaba, who is currently supporting the Ambazonian Governing Council outside of Ambazonia itself?
I don't want to answer that question, but the Ambazonian Governing Council and the Ambazonian people are supported mostly by the Ambazonian people. The African communities have failed Amazonia. The African existing political systems have been supporting Yaoundé constantly. But there are some positive signs we are getting from blocs like ECOWAS that has, for the first time, put on the agenda the Ambazonian case. Our case has been discussed in the UK Parliament, in the United States Senate. We just received from the Joe Biden administration, the possibility for Ambazonians who have escaped that brutality to reside in the United States for the next 18 months without being threatened with deportation. That is a monumental decision. We also have the US Senate has imposed some level of sanctions. We have different parliaments across the Western world haven't discussed the plight of our people, except most parliaments in Africa. And I hope, the South African parliament and others, are going to discuss this issue.
So how do you approach asking for support and also for this new way of thinking around governance and the emancipation of the people, where it almost seems also that there's the double standard where you're not able to say who are some of the supporters of the Ambazonian people, because transparency would be important, I guess, part of your model that you'd like to introduce. Why is it difficult for you?
I have just said sometimes you have different levels of support in terms of understanding of the plight of the Amazonian people, the historical injustices that have been created. We live in a statist system where the respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity is critical in diplomatic relationships. And so it will be foolhardy in the face of what we are facing to simply make transparency trump, non-disclosures that is critical for credible relationships. But we know that the Biafran people were also fighting one of our greatest partners. I have been down there to speak with elements of the South African government and other opposition leaders, and we'll be seeking more support from established states, different movements, to be able to help us overcome this level of occupation.
Okay, let's take your calls. 0117142006. A tweet here from Musa, who says that send my gratitude to the Ambazonian leader and all the best in the quest to gain independence from the colonial agents of Cameroon. And we have Kabelo, who's joining us from KZN. Good afternoon, Kabelo.
Hi, Adrian. How are you?
Good, Kabelo. Yes,
what is the important, topic, Adrian? I think everyone, every African child, it is something that we wish it can happen. It's something that we want that thing to be happen, because when you look at the global economy, the contribution that is making, by the African countries, it's huge. If the Africa can be independent, then now will get away with everything that is happening now in terms of the poverty, in terms of the employment, in terms of everything. So now, but now the biggest problem, Adrian, is that our African leaders, they're selling us out because they don't want to be united. You have the country that is colonized by American. You have a country that is all colonized by the West and the East. Then now these countries, when they fight, they're fighting their territories, because now when you come to my territory in South Africa, you mustn't come as a Russia to South Africa. So now they end up fighting there, for us, which is wrong. I just read one tweet from the guy from America, and then I was very angry with that guy. He says, for the African country to avoid economic blow, they must unite and then fight against Russia and tell Russia not to, to fight with Ukraine. Yeah. And then to me, I said that guy is very wrong. What is he implying now? He's trying to say the African countries, they must send the soldiers there in order to fight, for their wars. The war that does not include us as African people. It's wrong for those people in the Western America to think that we are the human shield. We are just a junk for them. They can use us anyhow. We are not a solution for them. Let them stay away from Africa, Adrian. I thank you.
Okay. Aisha is joining us from the Northern Cape. Good afternoon. Hi, Aisha. Are you still there?
Good afternoon. Yes, I am here, Aldrin.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to your guest. I would just like to tell him that is the right model that he is proposing. And then I want to tell him that to tell these big nations, the current model is unsustainable. And they have to adopt his model to be able to get what they want from the continent of Africa.
Okay, thank you so much, Aisha. Romeo is joining us from Joburg. Good afternoon, Romeo.
Good afternoon to you. Yes, I just want to pose a question during the interview that you made to the guest of Ambazonia about their independence. I thought he mentioned something like to say, you guys in South Africa, on those elections that you are doing, if you think that, I couldn't get him properly, but I thought you said you are wasting your time. Considering the fundamental issues that they are trying, the model system that they were trying to adopt in Ambazonia. My question is, had it been that your guest was a South African, what kind of model that he was going to put in place to benefit all the South African, according to his tune that he is singing, it looks like it sounds sweet. So if he was a South African, what kind of fundamental is that was going to cover everybody in South Africa?
Thank you, Romeo. Dr. Ayaba, a quick response to that?
I cannot prescribe a model for the South Africans. This will be, this will defeat the whole theoretical framework. What I'm trying to push forward is that it's like the lady said, the current model is unsustainable, whether at the political, environmental, or economic realm. And every people must be able to define, to derive a model that suits their own reality.
Okay. Dr. Ayaba, earlier on you also spoke about the U.S. Senate, and we know that the Deputy U.S. Secretary of State is on the continent, and I think today she is in Gabon. I just quickly want to play a quick voice note, not a voice note rather. I had an interview with her yesterday, and one of the questions that I asked her is about the presence of the Wagner Group on the continent. And now I see as well that the Cameroon Defense Department has signed an agreement with Russia. Just take a quick listen to this and a quick response from you. This is what she had to say.
We are very concerned about Wagner forces in Africa and think that this is very destabilizing. We understand that people are looking for security, but we think there are much better solutions than a proxy force related to the Kremlin. So yes, we have great concerns about the Wagner Group.
Why are you concerned? What informs those concerns?
What informs those concerns? Yeah. What informs those concerns is this is a proxy force that does not have, in our view, the interests of sovereign nations at heart.
Okay, that is Wendy Sherman, who we spoke to yesterday, the U.S. Deputy Secretary of State. Dr. Ayaba, your reaction to that agreement that has been signed by Cameroon with Russia?
We are not privy to the details of that agreement, and we are also aware that discussion between Yaoundé and Moscow started before this phase of the Ambazonian War of Liberation. So we have not been able to note whether the effective implementation is as a result of this conflict. But I would like to make a general comment. We have communicated our concerns to the Russians, and we have made it clear to the Russians that Cameroon does not serve the interests of stability in the Gulf of Guinea. It does not serve the interests of the Cameroonian people. It does not serve the interests of international peace and security. And when you have a regime where the average age of the ruling party is 75 years, such agreements do not serve the Russian interest. And we think that we are opposed to any agreements with tyrants that perpetuate those regimes for the interests of foreign countries.
Okay. Where is Regina Mundi?
Regina Mundi is a seasoned traitor that we arrested for representing the interests of a foreign government for complicity in the crime of genocide, and she is in custody.
She's in custody, not abducted.
She's arrested. We don't abduct, and we have made that point as clear as possible. We are a state. We are an authority protecting the territorial integrity of that state. And we function with respect to international norms and customary practices. She's been arrested. We've made a public statement. We have shown sign of life, and we've communicated our demands clearly to the international community and to Yaoundé.
Okay. And then a final one on Cameroon now becoming the chair of the African Union's Peace and Stability Committee. Your take on that?
Misplaced priorities. I think Africa is a disgrace. It's a disgrace to have such a country with an abysmal human rights record and I'm an agent of instability in the Gulf of Guinea to oversee the Peace and Security Council.
Thank you so much for your time. Dr. Cho Ayaba, who is the president of the Ambazonia Governing Council. It is 2 minutes after 5:30, time for the news headlines with Greg Hoss.